Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just as an opening statement, I certainly want to state my opinion, and I think the vast majority of the American people would agree that it's a little insane. I mean, it's kind of nuts that 18 months after this outbreak, trillions of dollars spent, millions of lives lost, millions more disrupted, businesses ruined, kids falling further behind in school than they already were, that this is the first hearing that the majority has hosted on the origins of the coronavirus. I mean, I just think the total lack of urgency to get to the bottom of this, again, a year and a half after the outbreak is just to be candid, a bit outrageous. And I do hope this is the first of many. This is a very complicated issue. And I do hope this is the first of many to get to the bottom of it. But I certainly applaud that, let's get started and having the hearing today. Dr. Relman, you walked through in your testimony what an investigation should look like. I think we all agree it hasn't looked like that with all of those elements. Key factors are objectivity and conflicts of interest. And you also stated, I just want to make sure I understand you correctly, neither hypothesis should be ruled out. Natural origin or a lab leak conducting that very dangerous research that you just described. Is that correct? They're both viable.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. And I would certainly agree. I just trying to wrap my mind around what I think may be the world's biggest coincidence, that the epicenter of this virus happened in a city, the only city in all of China that is conducting research, dangerous research on this virus, 1,000 miles away from natural origin, a city larger than Manhattan. And in a lab that the State Department in 2018 shared real concerns for its safety in a cable. So that brings me over to Dr. Perlman, and it was already mentioned, but I think it's worth mentioning again that in March 2020, you signed a letter that, quote, strongly condemned conspiracy theories that suggested COVID-19 does not have a natural origin. And I have to say, the entire world was looking to the scientific community at that time, just months after the outbreak. And that really did set the tone. And it's no surprise then we had the media and big tech banning any discussion of anything but natural origin. Dr. Perlman, do you still stand by that any discussion is a conspiracy theory, that Dr. Relman, who says it's a viable hypothesis, that it's not natural origin, is a conspiracy theorist? Do you stand by that statement?
So remember, the statement that I said just a few minutes ago, the statement was based on the notion that this was constructed from scratch. So that was really what the letter was about. I don't think it was defined well enough in that letter, but that's what the discussion was. It wasn't about all these other possibilities.
Now that it is constructed from scratch, you would call it conspiracy theory.
Well, I don't know, conspiracy theory obviously has a lot of pejorative terms with it. So it's not a term that one would want to use lightly. I think the idea at the time was, though, that this was all being convoluted so that a whole bunch of possibilities were put into the idea that this virus was made from the beginning.
Dr. Perlman, what that letter had the effect of doing was shutting off very viable lines of investigation into whether this came from that lab, which we are funding with U.S. taxpayer dollars, indirectly or directly. And we can't stop the next pandemic, the last three of which have come from China, without understanding where it came from. And now here we are a year and a half later, just trying to start figuring this out. And then you sign the Lancet Commission letter, which Peter Daszak has since resigned and recused himself from because he's receiving funding and his livelihood is dependent on the very type of research that we're asking him to investigate. So I think, yes, the Chinese cover-up has been abhorrent, but I think, Mr. Chairman, just as inexcusable is a scientific community who has not been objective, who has effectively shut off lines of research, whose livelihoods depend on funding pertaining to that research and could be compromised. And I think we as a committee need to take a hard look at those backgrounds and if there are conflicts of interest, as Dr. Relman pointed out, before we move forward in an objective way. I thank you for holding this, and I yield.